la conferencia titulada Food Safety Certification, a Historical Perspective. Esta estará a cargo de la doctora Jennylynd James. La alimentación es una actividad esencial que realizamos diariamente, muchas veces sin detenernos a pensar en los factores que garantizan que los alimentos que consumimos sean seguros, y la seguridad alimentaria es imprescindible en la producción de alimentos, la cual requiere compromiso, establecer protocolos rigurosos, cumplir con normas y capacidades, así como también un aprendizaje continuo. Por ello, agradecemos a la doctora Jennylynd James, quien nos acompaña hoy y compartirá sus conocimientos y abrirá un espacio de aprendizaje. La doctora Jennylynd James es una auténtica mujer renacentista, artista, escritora, vocalista y científica especializada en alimentación con más de 25 años de experiencia en el sector. Se doctoró en biotecnología alimentaria por la Universidad McGill de Canadá. Ha trabajado en el procesamiento de alimentos, la industria de frutas y verduras frescas, el servicio de alimentos, el mundo académico y la auditoría en el cumplimiento de la seguridad alimentaria en Canadá, Europa, Estados Unidos, el Caribe y América Latina. Actualmente audita empresas alimentarias en materia de seguridad y calidad alimentaria y además imparte formación y asesora a profesionales de la salud y en la industria alimentaria. También ella recibió el reconocimiento en septiembre del 2025. Este se titula Brand Reputation Completes Global Standards y lo recibió por entrenar a profesionales en la industria de los alimentos en el mundo, y específicamente ella se ha desempeñado en Canadá, así como en América Latina. Démosle una cordial bienvenida y una gracias.
Muchas gracias, Sonny, y gracias a la Facultad de Ingeniería, Química. Presentar en inglés y es posible año próximo voy a intentar en español. Okay. My presentation will follow this outline. I'll tell you a little bit about my background in the food industry. Then we will look at food safety certification, different definitions around food safety certification. We will talk about food safety certification from farm to fork, so from the farming enterprises, food processors, and then all the way to the consumer. When it comes to farm certifications, we're going to look at Global GAP, Canada GAP, as some examples. And for food safety certifications in the manufacture of food, we'll look at BRCGS, ISO 22000, FSSC 22000, and SQF certification. So an overview, a short summary of all these various certifications. So a little bit about me. I did a bachelor's degree in biochemistry at McGill University. It was pre-med. I realized I didn't want to go into medicine, and so I got into food technology. I did a master's at the University of the West Indies, and then a Ph.D. in food science and molecular genetics at McGill University in Canada. Following this, I moved to Florida. I did a postdoctoral research fellowship at Florida A&M University, post-harvest handling of muscadine grapes. And that was my introduction to agriculture. I started working as Director of Research and Development and Product Safety at a company based in Southern California. They had farms in California, also in Mexico, and I was responsible for developing food safety programs in the farming operations, pack houses, and salad plant. Following that, I worked at Dole Food Company in their world headquarters in Southern California. And I was responsible for food safety programs for bananas, pineapples, melons entering the US at that time. So it meant a lot of travel to farms in Honduras, Ecuador, many countries where the bananas and pineapples were grown. You see a picture of me here in Costa Rica at a pineapple plantation. Following my experience with Dole, I got a similar role at a company based in Dublin, Ireland, where I was a technical manager responsible for temperate fruits grown throughout Europe. So I visited the farming operations, the pack houses, to review their food safety and quality assurance programs. I then started my own enterprise. It was a great adventure, running my own business. So I developed a range of sauces and spice blends under my own brand name, Taste of the Caribbean. So that was the first time starting my own business. And it was a great adventure. I rebranded, as you can see, and had a van. I would deliver my products throughout Ireland and do tastings, TV presentations, etc. So great adventure, even presenting to some millionaire investors on television. We call that show the Dragon's Den. In the States, I think they call it Shark Tank. Anyway, during that time, I published a textbook, Microbial Hazard Identification in Fresh Fruits and Vegetables. And also I was commissioned by FAO to produce a technical guidance document for fresh cut tropical fruits and vegetables. So these publications are available online. And in fact, the textbook was used in the US at some universities in their curriculum. I relocated to Canada and worked as a consultant, food safety auditor, and a trainer for many years. I taught at Centennial College in Toronto, and as a consultant, I helped quite a few small businesses over the years. I trained as a food safety auditor, and we're going to talk a little bit about auditing in this presentation. So I would audit food manufacturing sites in the US, Canada, and Mexico. So conducting food safety audits for several different certification bodies as a consulting auditor. And after that experience, I trained as a trainer. So I now train auditors. I train food safety auditors and people at manufacturing sites on food safety principles. And this year, I was given the ATP award, so Approved Training Partner Award, by one key certification body, BRCGS. So it was quite exciting to get that award. All right, now we're going to talk about food safety certifications and why food safety certification is important. Well, if you think about foodborne illness, sometimes people get ill or they get sick because of contamination of food, right? Another reason why food safety certification is important, certifying food safety programs at manufacturing sites, pack houses, etc., would be to avoid product recalls. Who could tell me what is a recall? Let's pretend we're in a class here. Who knows what is a product recall? Anybody? Huh? Yes?
When like a product is bad, so they take it back,
Exactly. So something happens with a product that's contaminated. It could be a microbial contamination or maybe pieces of plastic or glass in the product, and the supermarkets have to remove all the product from the shelves. Now what happens with that is the consumer would lose faith in the brand name. They say, you see that brand name? I'm never going to buy their products again. So a food recall could be very expensive. First of all, the cost of removing all the product from the supermarket shelves, and then The hidden cost would be the reputation of the company. Their reputation is lost. It could be temporary. It would take a lot of money and advertising to get that brand reputation back on track. So we're going to look at a video. I'll just show part of it. And we'll look at what could happen with foodborne illness.
John, a 65-year-old male, has gone to the emergency room. He clutches his stomach in intense pain, suffering from a severe gastrointestinal illness. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that about 48 million people get sick, 128,000 are hospitalized, and 3,000 die each year from foodborne pathogens in the United States. Some germs make you sick within a few hours after you eat the contaminated food. Others may take several days before symptoms appear. Food poisoning symptoms may range from mild to severe and differ depending on the particular germ you swallow.
Any diarrhea or vomiting?
I threw up this morning and I threw up last night. I've had diarrhea for 2 days.
Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get a stool sample and run some blood work, and I'll be back shortly.
Okay, thanks. Oh.
There are many different disease-causing bacteria, parasites, and viruses that can contaminate foods. Laboratory testing is required to pinpoint exactly what is causing John's illness. Some of the more
Okay, so this is just a piece of a film. You can see this report on YouTube if you want to follow up some more later. But foodborne illness, we want to avoid foodborne illness. Food manufacturers want to avoid foodborne illness. People preparing food at the roadside. A lot of people like to eat, from those vendors at the roadside. We have to be aware of the possibility of foodborne illness. Okay, so we have another video. Some examples of product recalls at Walmart. Okay, so let's look at a few minutes of this.
Love Walmart, but don't want to deal with food poisoning or bits of plastic in your meals? The chain's had a number of notorious recalls. Could your favorite packaged food be next? In 2006, Walmart recalled peanut butter due to a salmonella contamination. The outbreak resulted in 628 reported cases across 47 states. The CDC and state health departments identified peanut butter brands Peter Pan and Great Value, produced at ConAgra's Georgia facility, as the outbreak's origin. This led to a widespread recall and an $11.2 million settlement by ConAgra, marking the largest criminal fine in an American food safety case. The outbreak was attributed to facility issues, including a leaky roof, which allowed moisture to facilitate the growth of salmonella. In 2020, the Salinas, California-based produce company, Tanamura and Antle, issued a recall for nearly 4,000 cases of romaine lettuce due to potential contamination with the strain of E. coli. This affected products distributed to over 1,000 Walmart stores across the United States. While no deaths were reported, 12 people got sick, and 5 of them were hospitalized. The recall specifically targeted single heads of Tanamura and Antle branded romaine lettuce in clear plastic bags with specific sell-by dates. Just 2 years earlier, following another E. coli scare involving romaine lettuce, Walmart implemented blockchain technology to trace leafy greens. The company aimed to quickly track produce from farm to store to improve food safety. The new technology required Walmart suppliers to trace their leafy greens back to the original farm within seconds, whereas before they were allowed days.
You're getting ready to eat.
All right, so just some examples of food recalls that happened in the past.
Love Walmart, but don't want to deal with.
So we want to have food safety certification, not just at manufacturing sites, but also in primary production. So growing fruits and vegetables, there are also food safety certifications in growing operations. Very important, we said, for avoiding food recalls, and of course, we don't want people to get sick. So that's why food safety certification is important. So we're going to look at some important definitions. what's a food safety and quality standard, what is certification, what's an audit, who's a certification body, and food standards and their certification programs. We're going to look at a few examples. Food safety and quality standard. So a standard is a set of rules and regulations established by governments, international organizations, and industry bodies to ensure the safety and quality of the food supply chain. So rules and regulations, when you think of standards, that's what we're thinking about. And here, these are some logos of a few food safety standards. GFSI, we're going to look at that today, Canada Gap in farming, right? So we have FSSC 22000, here at CGS, we're going to look at a few of these food safety standards in the presentation. Now when you think of food safety certification, there's several definitions. One of them, food safety certification, involves a rigorous process where a food operation, be it restaurant, processing plant, or packaging facility, is evaluated against established food safety standards. So you have the standard, someone goes in and they look at what they see and they establish if the site meets all the rules and regulations in the standard, right? Food safety certification shows that an organization or an organization's employees meet industry standards for food safety handling or working with food-related products, processes, or systems in the supply chain. Now, the next term we're going to look at is auditing. The result of being audited against a standard will determine if you get certified or not. So you have a list of rules and regulations in the standard, and someone comes in to do an audit against the standard, and if the site being audited meets all the requirements, then they will get their certification. So the next definition, what is an audit? An audit is a systematic, independent, and documented process for obtaining evidence and evaluating the evidence objectively to determine the extent to which the audit criteria or standards are fulfilled. So we have lots of keywords there. The audit is a systematic, independent process. It means that the auditor should not be working for the company or have any direct financial gain, financial relationship with the company that they're auditing. They must be completely independent. And then the auditor has to document, means he has to write down what he sees. He has to obtain evidence at the manufacturing site, collect evidence to determine if the site meets the requirements of the standard. Who could tell me what evidence an auditor could find? What evidence can they look at when they go to a manufacturing site? Can anybody tell me?
The cleanliness of the site.
Yes, so he's going to walk around and observe the cleanliness of the site. Very good. And he will write what he sees, because in the standard would say, you know, the site must be clean. There's a whole section in the standard about sanitation, always. Anything else? Whatever other evidence can the auditor review when he goes to the site? Yes?
The state of the food, that it's not rotten or ripened.
Okay, very good. So the quality of the food, right? The quality of the food, is the food material itself contaminated or not? So these are all observations that the auditor can make and write it down as objective evidence. Is there anything else anybody can think about? Yes?
If there are any plague, like spiders, ants, something like that.
Can you repeat, please?
Sorry. If there are any plague, like
Oh,
spiders
yes.
or ants.
Excellent. So one part of our standard is control of pests, pest control, pest management programs. That's always a part of all the food safety standards. Very good. So the auditor is going to look around to see if there's a presence of pests. Okay? They will also look at the pest management documents to see if anybody was checking regularly to see if pests are there. And if they found pests in the past, did they treat? Did they put down bait for rats and that sort of thing? So pest management program. Excellent. So you have another term that we can learn today, audit criteria. So you have audit standards or audit criteria, set of requirements used as a reference against which objective evidence is compared. Audit evidence could be documents, right? So the auditor will look at how the site documents their food safety program, how they write it down and keep records. The auditor can look at employee practices. Are people washing their hands before they go to work on the production line? The auditor can review the site itself, so we spoke about that, looking for pests, looking at the cleanliness of the site, right? So the auditor must do a site review, a site walk through, observing even the fabrication of the site. Is it falling apart? Would pieces of the ceiling fall into product and contaminate it? So a review of the site and then interviews with the staff. I know when I audit facilities, and I've audited facilities in Mexico, Canada, United States, I always interview staff. How do you do this? Why are you washing your hands? The why. Show me how you do it. You know, interviews are very important for gathering evidence during an audit. It's not moving. Okay. All right, so in the audit process, you have the audit criteria or the audit the standard, food safety standard or audit criteria. The auditor collects objectives and then the auditor is going to evaluate all the evidence that they collected and see if the site meets the requirements. The result of the audit, the output, is an audit report. So based on the audit findings, then the decision would be made if the site is going to get their certificate or not, right? So that's where food safety certification is evolved. Now, who hires the auditors? We said auditors have to be independent. Certification bodies hire the auditors. The certification body is a neutral party, usually a private company, not the government. Private company will train auditors and send them out to do audits. So they have to be completely independent. So certification bodies are accredited. They're third-party organizations which have been authorized by the scheme owner to carry out impartial audits. So certification bodies also have to be certified. You can't just open an office tomorrow and say you're a certification body. You have to be accredited and then train auditors to go out and do the audits. So certification bodies, they have to interpret the food safety standards, hire and train auditors to audit food companies against the standards, review the reports, and then they certify the manufacturing sites. When they're sure that the site meets the requirements of the standard, then the site will get their certificate from the certification body, not from the auditor, from the certification body. They're the ones who print out the certificates. So the benefits of auditing: to evaluate the effectiveness of the organization's management systems to comply with a standard. So one example of a standard, the Brand Reputation Compliance Global Standard, BRCGS. But there are other standards. We'll talk about them briefly in the next slide. The manufacturing site or the food company has a contract obligation for business and legal compliance. So think about complying with government regulations and also complying with their customers. So if a manufacturing site wants to supply product to Walmart, Walmart will ask them to see their certificate. Are you certified against a food safety standard? Only when you send your certificate, then you can sell to us. That's how it works. So, certification or benefits of auditing, another benefit would be continuous improvement. So just think the auditor comes, they see problems, they identify the problems, and the site can improve every year. So continuous improvement or finding problems before they happen. Right, so that's a good benefit of auditing. And here are some examples of certificates. Each certification body would have its own design of their certificate. Food safety certification benefits, so meeting market requirements, validating that the business follows healthy practices that ensure safety and quality, demonstrates that the environmental and other management systems are functioning. Getting global recognition. A lot of companies use this for marketing purposes. They put it on their website. Look at us, we have this certification. So it's great for marketing purposes, gaining the trust of customers, becoming legally compliant. So complying with government rules and regulations. Now, one of the first food safety certifications would be hazard analysis and critical control points. So, hazard certification was one of the first to come out many years ago as an official food safety certification. It's a tool to assess hazards and establish control systems to prevent hazards in food. It identifies specific hazards and measures for their control. It's science-based and systematic. And HACCP was developed back in the 1960s when NASA asked Pillsbury Company to develop a food safety system where astronauts can get safe food when they were going out into space. Then the HACCP program was later introduced to the food industry as a whole in 1971 at a conference. So if you think of hazard analysis, critical control points, we have one of the first principles of HACCP, looking at possible hazards in the food. You could have microbiological hazards, physical, chemical hazards, malicious contamination, fraud and substitution of allergen risk. This is malicious contamination. Who can tell me what is malicious contamination? Anybody knows that word? What's malicious contamination? What are they talking about? Yes. Because the auditor would look to see if the site has done a good hazard analysis and reviewed all the raw materials and each processing step for these hazards. Yes?
It might be when a company knows about some danger in maybe water or in some process in the food making. So the company knows about this danger and sells it anyway.
Okay. Well, that I think would go into fraud and substitution. Fraud, because the company already knows. So that's a good idea. We would put that idea in fraud. But if you think of malicious contamination, yes?
It can be also with using, for example, in vegetables, when you're using like untreated water.
Okay. So if the company is actually doing something wrong and they know about it and they still sell the product, we will put that idea in fraud. Thank you. But what about malicious contamination? Anybody? Okay. Yes?
I think it's the intentional delivery contamination in food.
Yes, so intentional contamination to cause harm. So we have, let's say a disgruntled employee, I don't like the boss, so I am going to put pins and needles in the product. Nobody knows, but it's to cause harm to the brand name, right? Because when they find out, somebody could get sick, die, and then the company's brand name is destroyed. So when you think of malicious contamination, that's to cause harm to people, harm to the brand name. Fraud and substitution, sometimes, people can extend honey with sugar and water. They make more money, right? It's known to happen in the food industry, right? So a lot of times with fraud and substitution is for financial gain. A lot of the time for financial gain. So that's the difference between malicious contamination and fraudulent activities. So the site in their hazard plan, they must review each step in the production flow charts, from when the ingredients come in and every step until product leaves. They have to review each step for possible hazards. So hazard analysis, you have 7 principles of hazard. Conduct a hazard analysis, identify critical control points, establish critical limits, monitor your critical control points, establish corrective action. So if you don't meet the critical limits, what corrections are you going to do? Who's responsible for the corrections? Validate the asset plan and create verification procedures. And of course, everything has to be documented. You have to keep good records for your food safety plan. So HACCP certification has been around for many years. HACCP certification was used in farm certification. So there was one company in Australia, 1994, they developed safe quality food, and 2000. And this was a food safety program for farms. And they were one of the first to come up with a program like that, a standard for farming operations. Later on, we have Global GAP, which was developed in Germany, and Canada GAP, of course, in Canada. So Global GAP, this company or organization started in 1996 because of the scare of pesticide residues in farm produce, and also mad cow disease in the UK with livestock. So a bunch of European retailers got together and they said, let's create a standard for farming operations, because it's nonsense. We don't want to have unsafe goods coming out of the farm and harming consumers. Right, so Global GAP, at first it was Europe GAP, only European farming operations, but the standard is now used all over the world for farming operations. We have over 20 years experience in not just developing and developing their farm standards, but we have many countries where farms are audited against the Global GAP standard. In Canada, the Canada GAP standard was developed over a number of years. At first they called it the On-Farm Food Safety Program, but eventually this standard was recognized by the Global Food Safety Initiative, an international organization that recognizes very good food safety standards. So they recognize the Canada GAP standard, right? And in 2020, the Canada GAP standard was revised and improved. So it includes repacking and wholesale requirements. So you find with food safety standards, even though the standard is developed 1 year, after a few years the standards are improved based on stakeholders' input. So you have input from certification bodies, input from supermarket chains, from manufacturers. They say change the standard, fix the standard. It never stays the same. Okay, if we think of manufacturing sites, we're going to talk about GFSI, the Global Food Safety Initiative. BRC, British Retail Consortium, they rebranded about 5 years ago because their standard is no longer for British companies. I've audited many companies in Mexico and they are audited against the BRCGS standard. So it's international now, so they call it Brand Reputation Compliance Global Standard. IFS, International Featured Standard, we have ISO 22003, FSSC 22000, and SQF for manufacturing sites. So these are some examples of food safety standards that you would find international. But the Global Food Safety Initiative, this was a collaboration of several food retailers and manufacturers who are members of the Consumer Goods Forum. So they developed a technical standard for food safety, right, back in 2000, and they continue to update the standard. Because you have participants from all over the world in this Consumer Goods Forum, this GFSI, right, Global Food Safety Initiative, is seen to be, their food safety standard is the one that sets the bar for all the other food safety standards. So their main focus is safe food for people everywhere, all around the globe. And 3 strategic objectives would be benchmarking and harmonization. If a company develops a new food safety standard, that standard is compared against the GFSI standard to see if it matches. If not, it's not recognized. Okay, if I want to start my own food safety standard next week, I can do it. However, it has to be benchmarked against the GFSI food safety standard. And that way, other companies can, food manufacturers can say, okay, let's get audited against Jennylynd's food safety standard. So they set the benchmark for all food safety standards. Capacity building, public-private collaboration. So collaborating with government. It's a private company, but they collaborate with governments to make sure sites meet legal requirements. So here in this diagram, you see GFSI recognized certification programs. So programs that are benchmarked against the GFSI food safety standards. Now, one such program, BRCGS, they have been around for quite a while. The company began in 1996, and they first published their food safety standard in 1998. So it's one of the oldest and most recognized food safety standards. Since the first standard was published in 1998, they are now on issue number 9, which was published in 2022. They revise their standards every 4 years. So in 2026, they will do a new revision. Why? People ask why they revise the standards all the time. Because things are changing. More information is available, and so the standards have to be revised to meet the current situation. Besides the food safety standard, the BRCGS has developed standard for storage and distribution, agents and brokers, food packaging, so they have developed many other standards over the years. This is just the cover of the current food safety standard. The aims of the standard: safety, authenticity, quality, and legal compliance. Even though it's a private company, BRCGS, in their standard, they ask a lot of questions to be sure that sites meet the legal requirements in the country where the product will be sold, because it's very important, besides food safety, that you have a good quality product. When they say authenticity, what does that mean? Who can tell me what is authenticity? Anybody? Yes. Excellent, excellent. So if they say they put olive oil as an ingredient, it must be olive oil. It shouldn't be olive oil diluted with mineral oil. That happens a lot in the food industry. All the expensive ingredients get diluted out. So there's one part of the standard, the BRCGS standard, that talks about authenticity. And next week I'm going to do a presentation here about food fraud. So if you're available, please come. We're going to talk a lot about that. Authenticity of the food. Legal compliance. Principles of food safety standards. All the food safety standards talk about senior management commitment, developing a hazard plan, food safety and quality management systems, prerequisites